On February 24th, 1996, two Cuban MiG-29s shot down two civilian Cessna aircraft over international waters in the Florida Straits. The planes belonged to a Miami-based exile group called Brothers to the Rescue. 3 U.S. citizens and a U.S. permanent resident were killed. 3 decades later, on May 20th, 2026, the U.S. indicted the man who ordered the shootdown. The same day, an aircraft carrier strike group entered the Caribbean. This looks a lot like the Trump administration's Venezuela Playbook. So, is Cuba next? Brothers to the Rescue was a volunteer group of Cuban exiles flying small civilian planes over the Florida Straits looking for rafters trying to reach the US. They had been doing it for years. They had also, on occasion, dropped leaflets over Havana criticizing the Castro regime. Fidel Castro told Time magazine in 1996 that the regime had warned the group, and that when the leaflet flights continued, the order came down to shoot the planes out of the sky. The man running Cuba's armed forces at the time, their defense minister, was Fidel's younger brother, Raúl. The Clinton administration considered indicting Raúl Castro at the time, but they didn't. The State Department raised foreign policy concerns. A quiet effort to expand the U.S.-Cuba relations was already in motion, and the case got shelved. 5 Cuban airmen were indicted, but Raúl walked. That decision, made by lawyers and diplomats in 1996, sat dormant for 3 decades, but it was reactivated this year by the Trump administration. While this legal scaffolding was being built, the economic squeeze against Cuba was already underway. On January 29th, President Trump signed an executive order threatening tariffs on any country that shipped oil to Cuba. The Venezuelan flows had already stopped when Maduro fell. Russian Shadow Fleet tankers backed off under the threat of secondary actions. The Charge d'Affaires in Havana, Mike Hammer, said it plainly at the time, quote, "Nothing is getting in, no more oil is coming," end quote. By May 13th, Cuba's energy minister announced the country had run out of the diesel fuel and fuel oil it needed to run its power plants. The island now experiences blackouts for up to 22 hours a day. Hospitals are rationing. The food chain is collapsing. Cuba's electric grid requires 110,000 barrels of oil a day, and they're only producing 40,000. This is what economic warfare looks like when it actually works the way it's supposed to. It does not require a single American boot on the ground to bring a regime to the edge. And it is paired with a steady drumbeat of military signaling. According to CNN, the U.S. has flown over 25 surveillance and intelligence gathering missions near Cuba since February 4th. CIA Director John Ratcliffe traveled to Havana last week and told Cuban officials, in essence, that the window for a negotiated exit was closing. Earlier this week, 4 things happened in coordination. First, at the Freedom Tower in Miami, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche announced the federal indictment of Raúl Castro for murder, conspiracy to kill U.S. nationals, and destruction of aircraft. Second, U.S. Southern Command announced that the USS Nimitz carrier strike group had entered the Caribbean. The official line is that this is part of a pre-planned military exercise called Southern Seas 2026. A U.S. senior official told the New York Times that the deployment is, quote, "a show of force, not a platform for major military operations," end quote. This phrasing may be meant to distinguish the Nimitz from the Gerald Ford, which did serve as a platform for major military operations against Maduro in January. Third, Secretary of State Marco Rubio released a Spanish-language video message addressed directly to the Cuban people. He told them, quote, "The only things standing in the way of a better future are those who control your country," end quote. Fourth, it was Cuba's Independence Day. May 20th marks the founding of the Cuban Republic in 1902. That's some fairly heavy-handed symbolism. The Trump administration has set the stage to remove the Cuban regime. The indictment serves as legal predicate, the military assets are in position, the regime's economic foundation is already cracked, and they delivered the ultimatum through CIA Director Ratcliffe. What remains to be seen is whether the administration has the bandwidth and political will to carry out another high-visibility military operation. My sense is that Trump will move on Castro. He was riding high after the U.S. military's impressive execution of the Venezuela operation, and he's been suffering from serious political and public pressure against his war in Iran. He may see this as an opportunity to put a positive spin on his overseas adventures. Stay tuned for more.